Hi, everybody in 201 Families course. We're moving into the final conversations of the course. Active classes end on December 2nd. So it's our opportunity now to sort of move into our final conversation of the course. It's been a very interesting course. It's been a hard shift, and I admit that, and I own that problem. And I hope to make some conversations as we go forward with this. I would really like to see the courses, particularly the families course, become more of a conversation course than a work submission course. And so that was the reason to step away and talk about the scenarios. And while it felt like we were talking about the same things over and over again, we do. And that's the reality of our job. We talk about the same things over and over and over again. But we need to make change. And some of that change starts with our thinking. And that change for me comes from the questions we're asking. And I am so glad to see that you're struggling. Some of us are struggling with the questions journal because it really is about the questions. A course is not about what I've come out having learned. A course is for my impression, a course is what I come out asking myself of questions about my practice. And in this piece, we're asking questions about our practice of working with families. What is it we're doing with the families? How do we change our royal families? How do we view the families? What are our policies saying? How do my actions are saying? What are the subtle actions saying? We may say something out loud in our policies, but we're not doing it in action. And so how do those things get misconnected? We're looking at the changing faces in Canada today. And so we're going to bookend from the textbook reading chapters 1 and 11. And so let's take a look at what we're going to sort of wrap our conversations up around over the next week or so. There's families everywhere in the world, and all families are impacted by the ecological systems theory, that the families at the core, they're impacted by the community that they live in, the province and the region they live in, the country they live in, the global issues we live in. And if you really want to we're impacted by, just the space that we live in as humans occupying the world and our vision of the grander world at large. And so we all have an impact. Everything has an impact in terms of our family system. And so let's take a look at sort of the content as we wrap it up, that ripple effect of families. And we've been talking a lot about the systems theory. So talking about the global citizenship piece. And we want to think that our pretend community of the league, the staff, the families, and the children, embrace the concept of being global citizens. They live locally. We live locally. But we want to think globally. We have to think globally because everything we do has an impact throughout the system. And we've talked about this a lot. And so we're going to take a look and review the whole global citizenship and social influences and how they can acknowledge the issues and the challenges of being part of the global family. So they've decided to pose a question for reflection in their family newsletter. And so there's another opportunity. We tend to think local all the time about our family newsletters. Maybe there's an opportunity to think global. Helena's going to focus on a question around the environment and how what we're doing enfocuses the environment at large. I mean, what we do here by throwing away a plastic bottle, how does that impact families in India? Lily and Serena, because they're at the same school, are going to have a question on discrimination. Very prominent in our news today, and sadly continues to be a prominent conversation in our world today. So what is the conversation? What is the question that we could pose that part of it? Gwen's program is choosing to look at human rights, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare. Jane's program is looked at child survival. Abby's program is looking at the rights of the child, and Gil's going to focus on access to education. So what we're looking for here, and this is a huge challenge because we're thinking about how do we get families thinking about what we're doing locally and how it impacts the big wide world. Draft a question for each of the programs that you could include in a family newsletter or a website. And how does it connect to the early learning framework and the principles of care? So think about the early learning framework questions. And if you want to draw a question from the pathways of the early learning framework, by all means, pull a question from there and say, and how would you frame that in your family newsletter or on your bulletin board or a family meeting? How would you bring that in so that we're not always talking about just a little thing within our tiny little niche of our program, but giving families the scope to think about bigger parts. I mean, we talk about the ideas of, the rights to food, shelter, clothing, and health care. And so we say that these are important things, and these are the things we want our program to support, and identify with. And so here's what we're doing within our program to make the world a better place. And essentially that's it. Maybe that's the header for the newsletter, how we can make our world a better place. And then there's that piece about how we become actively involved in the global family concept. So a big challenge to wrap up the course with, but I think we've worked hard at starting to ask those bigger questions as we've gone through the course. Remember, December 2nd, active class ends. All work should be in my hands by December 2nd. If that's not a reality for you, get in touch with me before December 2nd so that we can certainly process that piece through. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again next week and online through the week, but we'll talk next week to wrap up the whole course.